And we are live.
Good evening and welcome to the June 5, 2024 Special Hybrid Planning Commission meeting. I'm Mike Murphy, the chair. Tonight's Hybrid Planning Commission meeting is brought to you courtesy of Zoom. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, please have your mics turned on for the roll call. Deputy City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Murphy.
Present.
Vice Chair Reagan.
Present.
Commissioner Hughes.
Present.
Commissioner Battazo.
Here.
Commissioner Rashis.
Here.
And there we go.
And not anymore. Okay, our first item of business is public appearances. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the commission about issues of concern, except those items scheduled for a public hearing, if there is one this evening. Is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the commission?
Chair, there was no one that signed up prior to 4 p.m. and I do not see anybody in the attendees box.
Okay. So we'll now move to special business. The first item of special business is to review and consider approving the minutes of the May 15 special meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes. Is there any comment or discussion of or corrections needed to the minutes? Seeing no hands, Deb, would you like to do the roll call vote on approving the minutes?
Thank you, sir. Chair Murphy.
Aye.
Vice Chair Reagan.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Battazo.
Aye.
And Commissioner Rashis.
Aye.
Thank you.
Minutes are approved. The second item of business is Agenda Bill 2414, Planning Commission Administration. There are three topics in this agenda bill. The first item to discuss is chair and vice chair elections. And we would welcome Deputy City Clerk Estrada as she leads us through the election process. Deb?
Thank you, Chair. So tonight, we're changing things up a little bit, perhaps from what we've done in the past, in that we've incorporated a process that's much more similar to what the council does. So I'll walk you through the steps, and after the chair is elected, if the new chair would like to take over this process, they will refer to the script, or if they prefer that I continue and get us through the election of the vice chair, I can do that. So commissioners, there are under the Planning Commission bylaws, commissioners shall elect a chair and vice chair for a term of 1 year from among themselves at the June Planning Commission meeting, or as soon as possible thereafter, or upon vacancy or resignation of the commissioner filling the chair or vice chair position. The election process is outlined in section 3.1 of the Planning Commission bylaws that were adopted last December. Tonight, I will call for nominations for the chair. If there is only one nominee, it is appropriate to make a motion and obtain a second to instruct myself as Deputy City Clerk to cast a unanimous ballot for that nomination for chair. Approval is by majority vote of the commissioners present. In that case, it would be 3 of you. Elections will continue until the chair is elected by a majority vote of the commission. Upon the election of the chair will then proceed in the same fashion with the election of the vice chair, or as I explained earlier, I can manage that process on their behalf. So at this point, I'll entertain nominations for a commissioner to serve as chair for a period of 1 year.
I'd like to nominate Chair Murphy for the chair position.
Are there any other nominations?
Yes. I would like to nominate Commissioner Battazo as chair.
And are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, we'll close the nominations. Commissioners, in the order in which nominations were made. Although I suppose Commissioner or Chair Murphy, you could decline.
I will decline, yes.
Okay. In that case, that leaves us with a nomination by Chair Murphy to nominate Commissioner Battazzo as chair. So seeing that there's only one nomination, is there a motion for Commissioner Battazzo to be chair?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Third.
Okay, so we're going to say Commissioner Hughes made the motion and Commissioner Rashid seconded it. Is that correct?
I think they went before me.
So
I don't know. I'm happy to take it, but
Commissioner Rashid, did you make the motion or was it Vice Chair Reagan?
I think it was a jump ball between myself and Vice Chair Raghib, and so I said I seconded. I concede to him.
Okay. You're a gentleman and a scholar. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to nominate Commissioner Battazzo as chair.
Deputy Clerk Estrada, were you not going to ask if I was going to accept the nomination or decline it? Because I would just like, were you guys just going to make me take it?
Yeah, pretty much.
By force?
yeah.
I'm
just
sorry.
asking about rules.
That was funny. No, there isn't actually a rule about this, and I guess the only reason why I thought of Chair Murphy is because he was the one who nominated you. I suppose, in all fairness, you could choose to decline.
I could.
Yes, you can.
No.
I could.
Are you debating the motion in the second at this point, or would you like to continue with the roll call vote?
That's fine. Go to the roll call.
All right. Commissioner Murphy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Reagan,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
I
Commissioner Battazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashid.
Aye.
All right. And I need to stop saying 7-0 on these votes,
It's going to be hard. We give you 3 meetings to practice.
right? 23 rotations and 3 meetings. Okay, and with that, Chair Battazzo, you can take over the election of a vice chair, or if you'd like, I can continue in the same manner on your behalf.
I would actually prefer either you or former Chair Murphy to continue for this meeting, if we
Okay.
could.
You mean for the entirety of the meeting or
That would be my preference.
just the election process?
Can
I
we
think that-
have Chair Murphy finish the meeting for us this evening?
I
Do you
think
need a
the appropriate step would be to have Deb finish the election process, to have the vice chair. And then you can have the vice chair chair the meeting. Or
Okay.
whatever.
I would like to make a nominate former Chair Murphy to be Vice Chair Murphy.
Is that turnabout is fair play, huh?
Kinda.
Do we have any other nominations for vice chair?
May I self-nominate?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
It's happened in my 25 years before. So,
All right.
okay, so I have Commissioner Reagan nominating himself. Okay, are there any other nominations? In the spirit of our last discussion, do either one of those individuals wish to decline the nomination?
Yeah, I think I'll stick with that.
Okay. So unless there's no other nominations, I'll now close the nominations. We have
Oh.
2 individuals. I'm sorry, excuse me,
If-
Vice Chair Reagan.
If Chair Murphy's not declining, then I'll decline. So, yeah, I'll withdraw my self-nomination.
Okay. In that case, seeing that there is only one official nomination at this point, is there a motion, excuse me, for Commissioner Murphy to be vice chair?
So
So
moved.
So moved.
I got it.
We had duplication, so, and I was
I get
looking
that
away.
one. I
Okay,
was first. I was first.
all right, and do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, we'll go to the roll call vote. Commissioner Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Rugged,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Chair Batazzo,
Aye.
and Commissioner Rashis.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, and that closes the elections for this evening. And going back to the original discussion, Chair Batazzo, you had requested that
Chair
perhaps the
Murphy.
vice chair, in this
Yes.
case, Vice Chair Murphy, take over the remainder of the meeting.
Please.
I will do so. So having completed that, congratulations, Chair Batazzo, on your elevation. And I'll congratulate myself on my demotion. So the second item under Agenda Bill 2414 is a bylaws update. Deputy Director Allison Van Gorp, I believe, has a presentation.
Actually don't have a presentation, but I just wanted to say a
Oh.
few words. So typically in years past, we've updated the bylaws at this June meeting. We're gonna hold on that this year because of the recent actions by the city council to reconfigure the planning commission. We need to draft some updates to the bylaws to reflect that. I think there's several areas throughout where we're going to need to make amendments, and we need a little more time for the city clerk's office and the city attorney's office to review that and prepare the amendments. So we'll be bringing those back to the commission at a later time. I'm thinking that will probably be this fall. And then at that time, if any of the commissioners would like to propose amendments to the bylaws in addition to the ones proposed by the staff, you'll have an opportunity to do that at that time. And then I can move on to the next item unless there's any questions.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the next thing we need to do is appoint a new member to the housing work group. We would like to reconvene the housing work group to start meeting at the end of this month. You may recall that we need to make some increases in capacity for higher mid-density housing to address the shortfall that was found in the land capacity analysis. So we would like to bring the housing work group back together to help us draft that code amendment that will likely add some additional capacity in town center, and then also add multifamily housing as an allowed use in the CO zone. So Carolyn Boatsman was previously on the work group, but since her term has expired on the commission, we'll be looking for a new representative. And as long as Commissioner Hughes is interested in continuing on the work group, we would welcome her to just continue and then just add a new member.
Yeah, I would like to continue, and I would like to nominate Chair Batazzo to take Carolyn Boatsman's place, Commissioner Boatsman's place. Do we need a second?
Yeah,
Well, it's in a way, it's kind of a volunteer thing. So the question is more, is Chair Batazzo willing to volunteer for that duty?
This is a volunteer thing? All right, I volunteer to participate on the housing work group.
Okay. So we have, she's volunteered, we have made I guess a motion by Commissioner Hughes. Do we have a second for the motion to appoint Chair Batazzo to the housing work group? I will second it if no one else will. So moved and seconded. Deb, do you want to call the roll on appointing Chair Batazzo?
Certainly. Vice Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashid,
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan,
Aye.
and Chair Batazzo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the final item of special business is Agenda Bill 2415, Comp Plan Periodic Review Deliberations. And I believe Adam Zach is supposed to talk to us now.
All right, thank you. Welcome back. Feels like we were just here.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen here. I've got a couple of slides to get to, and then we'll continue the discussion from last week. Okay. So tonight we'll be continuing the deliberations from that began at last week's meeting on the 29th. And our purpose tonight is to work on your recommendation for the transportation, capital facilities, utilities, and parks and open space elements. We're kind of taking these in chunks with planning on addressing the other elements at the next week's meeting, so we can get to a recommendation on the whole plan. And so that's kind of the overarching goal, is to arrive at your recommendation to the city council on the overall comprehensive plan update in terms of the amended elements. Just as a refresher, we're updating the comprehensive plan because it's required that we update it by the end of this year under the Washington State Growth Management Act. And the update is really to extend the planning horizon for the comprehensive plan for the next 20 years. This update also addresses some of those the new GMA requirements that were established by the Washington State Legislature in recent sessions. I won't go into as much detail on the project timeline. If members of the public watching this are interested in seeing kind of an in-depth look at this timeline, I would recommend watching last week's meeting. I kind of went through this point by point. The main thing to know here is that we've been working on this comprehensive plan update since the spring of 2022, when the city council adopted the scope of work, public participation plan, and master schedule for the project. And throughout the intervening 2 years, the Planning Commission has been reviewing the elements of the comprehensive plan and working on updates to respond to those statewide requirements and then other changes in regional and countywide policies. So that brings us up to today. Here, I didn't move my "We Are Here" box, but we are in the tail end of the Planning Commission's legislative process for reviewing the comprehensive plan update. The Planning Commission held a public hearing last Wednesday, May 29th, and began considering their recommendation. And then tonight, and then on June 12th, we plan to continue those deliberations and work towards that recommendation to the City Council. And that would conclude the Planning Commission's legislative review of the comprehensive plan update, the elements themselves, the goals and policies of the plan. From there, the process would then be handed off to the City Council for their review. So even when the Planning Commission wraps up their review of the elements, that's not the final action. The City Council ultimately will decide whether to adopt the comprehensive plan as recommended or with amendments. And that'll kick off in the summer. We're planning to give the City Council their initial briefing in July. And then from there, they'll continue their review into the fall. As Allison mentioned, we're reconvening the housing work group soon to begin looking at those implementing code amendments, specifically the code amendments to increase the multifamily and mixed use development capacity focusing on looking at the development regulations in town center and reviewing potential height increase there, and then the commercial adding multifamily housing and mixed use housing as an allowed use in the commercial office zone. And both of those amendments, or the general idea for those amendments, was directed by the city council earlier this year. So the housing work group will pick that up in over the summer, and that work will then come to the planning commission. We're expecting to have that to bring forward in September. So then the planning commission will conduct an additional review of those code amendments, make a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council will consider adoption of those. So we still have some work ahead of us, even when we get to your recommendation next week. As a recap of the public hearing last week, we received the Planning Commission received public testimony on the proposed comprehensive plan update and began its deliberations. Last week, you approved 6 motions. You can see the full text in those in the 529 meeting minutes, which should be available next week. But essentially, you decided to close the policy gaps and resolve the internal consistency topics as recommended by staff. And then there were a couple of amendments that were made to the transportation, land use, and housing element text in response to some comments from former Commissioner Boatsman. And then the final motion was to accept the staff recommended findings that were provided as a working document and begin kind of working on the Planning Commission's findings in addition to the updated comprehensive plan elements. At that meeting too, the Planning Commission requested some additional information, and these were provided in Agenda Bill 2415. So the first thing that you requested was a public comment tracking mechanism. And so there was a table provided in that Planning Commission bill to track those comments and track the resolution for those comments. And before I keep going, I see a hand up.
So I just had a quick question on that table. When I looked at that table in the packet, aside from names, that table was blank. Do we have a timeline for when we're gonna fill that out, or what's the plan on that? So
those additional comments, and actually I can show you here. So this is essentially what the table is in the Planning Commission bill. In the interest of saving some space in the agenda bill, I just referenced the names and assigned them a log number. You can find the full comment was provided in the exhibit to the Planning Commission bill. And then these empty columns here, as we go through, if there are amendments made in response to one of these comments, we can track it there. I provided this as a tool for you to keep track of this, for us to keep track of it as we go through it. We're not necessarily obligated to make a change one way or the other on any of these. This is just a tracking tool. Did that answer your question? Okay, great. So one of the other pieces of information that the commission requested on the 29th was some information about the scope of work. And so the Planning Commission bill included a link to the adopted or approved scope of work, which was Resolution 1621, and then also the addendum to the scope of work that was adopted or approved in 2023 with Resolution 1645. So that's where you can find that information. And then the final thing that was requested was information on where the housing element, the minimum requirements for the housing element were provided. And so I provided a link to Planning Commission Bill 2405, which that was the version of that's the housing work group drafts of the housing element, and it includes the references to those minimum requirements. So that's where you can find that if you're looking for it. So there are some comments that we've received, and we're now keeping track of where those amendments have been made. The first table that you'll see in PCB 2415 is tracking the planning commissioner's comments, the comments that have been submitted by members of this body. So the table in the planning commission bill stops at PC5, which was received by Chris Gels. The subsequent what is that, eight comments came in from Adam Regheb yesterday, and so those were forwarded, or sorry, was it Monday? They came in after the planning commission bill was published, so that's why they're underlined here. We can come back and revisit those if needed. They'll also be included in the next planning commission bill. But this is just a track where we've responded to planning commissioner comments. And then we just talked about the public comment tracker. There were 3 public comments that were received after the planning commission bill was published. Those came from now private citizen Chris Gels, Meg Lippert, and Sarah Fletcher. Those will again be included in the next draft. And as we work through updating or your recommendation, we can track any actions that the planning commission may take in response to these comments using this table, and that'll get updated as we go. So the other part of this that I wanted to touch on again, we talked quite a bit last week about findings, and I just wanted to touch on this again because I think this will be a big part of our discussion moving forward. So the draft findings are your way of kind of memorializing why you're doing a certain thing, or provide some information about your expectations for implementation. And we're planning on having those in section 4 of the draft findings. Sections 1 through 3 are really just kind of some technical documentation about how the proposed update satisfies the procedural requirements in the city code and how it includes the content that's required by the Growth Management Act. So the point where we can kind of focus your attention for making planning commission findings would be in section 4. We looked at that a little bit last week, but I just kind of wanted to put that out there again. Staff has recommended 7 findings that are directed at some of the public input and some of the identified policy gaps. And those were provided with last week's planning commission bill 2413 in table 2. And there's a recommended motion in that planning commission bill, and I'll bring it up here in a moment, that would essentially just make these 7 findings with a single action. And if you do that, that isn't necessarily closing the findings. It would just be saying these 7 we're going to put in there. And then if you have additional findings, you can make those throughout the remainder of the deliberations process. So nothing's really fixed in stone until you make your final recommendation to the city council. And again, throughout this process, as we come across public comments or other things where you want to include some direction about what you're expecting in terms of implementation, or if you want to provide additional context, the findings are the place to do that. And we can additional findings or amendments to the findings can be made by motion, just as we would with anything else. I see another hand.
Yeah, just going back on the previous slide. So when at the bottom bullet where you talk about adopting those 7 findings, and that they can still be changed and edited and all that. How's that different from what we did last week?
Yeah, I have the same question, Adam.
Well, I think if that was the intention, I think the discussion was unclear at that point. But if that's what the understanding was, we can move forward with that as
I think I proposed the
understanding.
motion, and that was my understanding. When we said
Okay.
working, I think we said working document.
Mhm.
My understanding was that, and I think I even articulated this in the meeting, we'd have to go back and look at the video. I think I said, yeah, we're going to continue to make changes to this, edit it, add to it, and so on. And that was my understanding of a working document.
Okay. Well, that clarifies that. Sorry for the misunderstanding.
Okay. Chair Bataza.
We might want to make it clear in this meeting if we are accepting the findings provided by the city, because I have a feeling I don't think we actually did. I see what Commissioner Rashish is pointing to, and I remember that conversation. I also remember I was the one who was kind of putting up a stink about it, so I'll readily admit that I was the one causing trouble. I'm going to set that aside for a minute, and we'll clean that up in a second. I do want to go back to public comments. So I think it's a great start. Thank you. It's a great start that we have them up. There's no resolution. I don't want to play like ask the wrong question and get the wrong answer. So I think what maybe might be best is me just being very transparent with you guys about with my friends Adam and Allison about I think what I was requesting and asking for. This is a good start, but I think I was actually asking for the city to make recommendations on what to do about comments. And I've sat with this for a couple of days thinking about it, like maybe they're waiting for us to make recommendations. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure if the roles are clear. In my mind and in my experience, and I'll just be honest, like this is just in my mind and in my experience, usually it's the agency whether it's a city or a government authority of some kind who takes a crack at making a recommendation based on public feedback. And the governing or advising bodies make comments relative to that. I've rarely seen the government or advising body make the initial comment. I don't see boards. I don't see commissions. I don't see people taking the first crack at making comments or responding to public comment. I see the agency who's received it as receiving the comments, making an initial draft, and then advising boards make responses. And so that is, in my mind, what I was waiting for. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing for us to have a misunderstanding. I'm willing for this to be different on Mercer Island. But in the myriad of places that I've had this experience, this was not, I'm waiting for you guys to tell me what you think, much like you pre-wrote my findings for me. Like, I feel like you pre-wrote the commission's findings for them. I'm waiting for the pre-written, here's what we recommend based on our consistency, our policy approach, and what we've been doing. So in my mind, I'm like, this is a good start, but I can't take action on this because I'm not going to fill in this table. Bare minimum, if I'm really honest, I'm like, if you guys don't want to do it, then give it to city council. Because I feel like it's their responsibility to respond to Sarah Fletcher's many emails about these issues. It's not entirely mine. I just advise. Now, if we need to have a conversation about what direction advisement needs to be, then let's flush that up now. But I feel like it's incomplete, and I'm trying to figure out whose responsibility is to complete it, and I wasn't thinking it was mine.
From the staff side, what we could use from you, from the commission, is some direction on whether you would like to make an amendment or adopt a finding or take some other action related to each of these comments. If you do want an amendment, you can request that staff draft something or propose something give us some general direction of what you would like. We could draft it. I think Adam and I talked about this extensively, and we were struggling a bit because these comments range all over the place, right? Some of them
Yeah.
are quite lengthy. Some of them are very detailed and touch on multiple areas of the plan. It's not easy to delineate exactly what should be done with each of them or whether something should be done with each of them. So I think it would be useful for the commission to perhaps go through each of the comments or the comments that you believe merit some kind of response in terms of an amendment or a finding.
Well, this is where I feel like we're getting into a little bit of that debate of, well, whose responsibility is it to make that first pass? Because I agree with you. Any comments that say, what on earth do you mean by this? It's kind of hard to address, and I'm not going to be making an amendment based on a comment like that. But eventually at some point in time when someone's looking for something to do, I think responding to that comment, or at least pointing to, here's where you might find more information about what we mean by that, is public responsibility. In those places where someone might say, and retain trees, where I would expect the city to take a first pass and respond however it makes sense, or make a recommendation on an edit or a revision, similar to what you did in the findings. I'm just not sure. It does seem like I would have expected the city to do this first pass and take your first best professional guess at, these 6 of 15 comments within this actually warrant maybe looking at this revision, or we addressed it by this particular finding. For example, like crosswalking your findings to comments that have been given. That's like, we think that our finding actually addresses these 6 comments. Like, I think that would have also been useful. At this point, I feel like you're requesting that we do it. And I just am not sure that that's actually appropriate as an advisory role. I'm just not as sure that that's appropriate for us to be doing it, rather than you make a recommendation and we nod our heads or shake our heads or make some sort of comment. I'm just not sure doing that work is actually that. It's where I actually pose the question, is it really our job to do that work, or do I feel like you guys receive the comments, you do the work, and we say yes or no around it? It sounds like we have a disconnect around that.
I mean, I can say the way we've typically done it has been that the commission makes a decision about whether or not to make a change based on public comment.
Okay, say that one more time, please. Sorry.
Our past practice, the way we've typically done it is that the commission makes a decision about whether or not to make a change based on public comment.
Chair Murphy, have you been on this? Are you the last remaining commissioner that's been on this the longest, or Commissioner Reed, are you? Who's been on this commission the longest?
I think it's a tie, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, I love ties.
Yeah. The problem is that we've never, the comp plan, full comp plan amendments don't come up every year.
For good reason.
Yeah, it's a 10-year cycle, so neither one of us have been through this. So trying to equate this with, say the annual docket or something of that nature, where there might be some specific things, Allison might be referring to that, but I don't think either Victor or I have lived experience dealing with this, and especially with the type of comments that we're seeing. And frankly, I share your concern. And while Allison is saying that we have the final say, the question becomes, who does the legwork of pouring through that material and determining if there are some nuggets in there that are worthy, either in their own right because they've stated them or because they can be teased out as amendments. I think that if you asked the 5 commissioners to do that, we would have very different views of that, and it would be a wildly time-consuming process. I know Adam Raghav has gone through at least some of those and teased out some proposed amendments, and I applaud him for that effort. But that's a heavy lift with the list that we're looking at here. So I share Chair Battazzo's concerns about the process of how to do that. Adam, I think your hand was next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought, when we had the meeting last week, we were said, deadline for comments, June 3rd. I thought our job was to read through those comments and propose comments of our own in response to select, whatever, we filter through it and put things in front of the commission to discuss. I mean, I think, when people send that email, it's addressed to Planning Commission. That's us 7 and now 5. It's not CPD at Mercer Island. That being said, I think if you guys, you saw the emails, I sent one, Adam Zach forwarded my initial one Monday, and then he said he, recommends, in the interest of expediency and clarity, proposing them as motions. And a point that Chair Battazzo made about give it to City Council, I agree with her on that. And that's why, if you've, taken the time to read what Adam forwarded on Monday and what he forwarded for me on Tuesday, the ones where there's actual content change, I said, let's add those as findings to help make City Council's job earlier. I kind of thought about it, like, I don't want to make a big change goal wise after the public hearing. And that, I think I'm looking at my 8 proposed motions, and yeah, 3 of them are, let's add to the findings. It's kind of a boiling down of those public comments. And then the other 5 are just, those are facts really that the public commented on and found that are incorrect in the narrative of the transportation element. And I think, I have no problem correcting, small editorial facts like that. But anything content wise, that's why I, 1, 2, and 5 are, hey, I'll propose we add this to our findings. Additionally, I only looked at the 3 element, I only looked at public comments related to the 3 elements that we're talking about today. My expected plan of action was to, come up with some proposed motions based on the other 3 elements that we'll be discussing next week. I'm assuming by the deadline of Monday, unless that is not how the commission wants to act. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Victor, I think you were next.
Actually, I think Kate's next.
Thanks, Victor. I'm inclined to kind of agree with everyone here. My expectation for the table was also not met. And I think what I was expecting after last time was, just my experience with government is before something goes to council or a board, there's an analysis that's done to bring together comments from different people that are on the same theme. And that way, that we're not picking and choosing the ones that we think merit attention. We're giving attention to all of them, and with equal weight, because each one is a comment from a person that matters in the community. So I was expecting this table to have theme and then comments under that theme, and then what the source of that comment was, for the record. And then I was also expecting there to be a column from staff as part of the analysis, something that said, is this consistent with guidance from Commerce? And from there, I think that we could make some educated suggestions to council, because anything we do, we're not like declaring what is or isn't. We're always making a recommendation to council, and they can do what they want with it. But I think it is the job of this body to make recommendations to council and not leave it to them to analyze whether or not something's consistent with code or consistent with Department of Commerce guidelines. So I'd like to propose, and whether it's staff or commission that does it, I think I'd like to propose that we modify the table so that it's broken out thematically, so that we can ensure, I think that the idea in the first place was to make sure that we are addressing all comments with the same process, and that each one had a review for consistency. I think that would be extremely helpful. And if you want Planning Commission to build that table, we can talk about who can do that. I'd be happy to work with another commissioner to put that table together, but I feel like we need that before, and many of the items that Commissioner Rigeb pulled out, I agree with, need to be responded to, but there are also other ones. And I was expecting to do that through a table that had, is this consistent or not, based on staff experience. And I was kind of expecting to see comments that address the same thing, but were from different senders, kind of grouped so that we could weigh all the comments together. But I would just ask the staff and the commission, I would rather, look at Commissioner Rickab's suggestion in the light of a table that's really complete, that has themed comments. And I don't know if that would be helpful to others. And if staff need a commissioner to volunteer to help produce that, I'd be happy to help, because I have to do this for my job all the time. And it has to be objective. When you put together the table of comments, you're just taking out kind of verbatim what people said, but you're grouping it so you can see what different people said on the same thing together.
So on that, if that would be, well, I had 2 days to put together this table. So if it would be helpful to have them grouped in that way, we can do that in advance of the next meeting. I think where there's a challenge though with a lot of these comments in making a statement as to whether or not, even a recommendation as to whether or not to make these changes, because they're not necessarily inconsistent with guidance, or they're a difference of approach. A lot of the comments are presenting a difference of approach. And so it makes it really difficult to fill in that from a staff perspective and say, yes, make this change, no, don't make that change kind of recommendation. And so I think
And
that's
maybe,
part of
I don't think I'm
challenge.
saying make it or don't make it. What I'm saying, and maybe what I'm saying is it's a simple, not a concurrence, but rather just this is inconsistent. Like maybe there's just a checkbox that, and if it is inconsistent, what is it what MPP, what CPP is it inconsistent with? Yeah, so not the burden of proof that something could be true, because that is, like you said, you're getting into policy decision making, and I understand why staff want to avoid that, because that's our job to make that recommendation to council. But the analysis, though, I think that is a staff job. I agree with Angie on that, but I understand that may have been done differently for some time between the commission and staff. That's why I was offering to help if it's useful.
So what I'm hearing is, and I would pose this to the group then, is that for the next iteration of the comment tracking table, you'd like them grouped by topic with some additional information. I can't necessarily say that, like, I can't analyze every one of these comments because, like I said, some of them are more approach than they are objective. And so, but I do think we can fill out the table a bit more and group some comments together by topic, if that's helpful.
Victor,
So I don't want to sell paths to close. It sounds like we have a resolution here, but just for the record, I want to say +1 to Chair Batazzo's comments. It sounds like she has a lot of expertise in this area regarding how other cities and other surrounding areas do that. I defer to that expertise. It also happens to align with my understanding of kind of the relationship of this commission and the work that we do, and we react to things and proposals that are put in front of us. We advise, we do not create or legislate.
So Adam, let me make a couple of additional comments here. Looking at the list of public comments, the task may not be as daunting as it appears. For example, numbers 9 and 10 really are short and rail about the process, which is something that we really talked about at some length last week. 11 and 12 simply repeat Dan Thompson's list. The ones to really focus on, which have both amendments and specific comments, are 2 and 3, and 3 is simply almost a repeat of 2. And then number 8, which is Dan Thompson's, and there are a few actual recommendations in there, so that are worthy of discussion. So I don't think the task is quite as daunting as the list and the length of some of the emails would make it appear.
Yeah, I think I do think with a little more time in advance of the next meeting, we can get those kind of grouped together. And then I would think I intend, I think, to just pull them out by element where they, these comments relate to transportation and so on. I think that'll make it a lot more clear. And then I think I can also mark where if you wanted to make a change, we may need to draft some different language. I think that might be the political way to put it.
Chair.
I think I want to acknowledge that I have not had access to my email, so Commissioner Regab has provided probably substantive comments that address a number of things that I have not reviewed. Apologies. I'll take responsibility of that and wing that as we address it tonight. If the city's looking for direction, I think Commissioner Hughes and Commissioner Murphy have provided some good direction. I think I would just emphasize for those comments that are substantive, recommending specific change. And I will give people credit that most folks have literally listed by goal or page or line. So yes, Adam, like you said, list it by element and then group things together. But there's substantive pieces that can just be addressed as consistent with current direction, but no change recommended, for example. Some people are just wordsmithing, and we do not have to address all wordsmithing. Some of it makes some subtle changes and we can decide or not. And some of it is a change in direction. I do think an initial pass at looking at here are the elements, here's the recommendations from the public. These things change the direction that we're headed. These things are consistent in their wordsmithing. If you need like a matrix or some examples that I could provide, like here's how we've done it in other jurisdictions or other places before, so that we are responsive to the public, because I think that's what we're all trying to get to. within our particular roles. Then if you want very specific direction from commission, then I would recommend that, and maybe take Kate, who's right here on me, up on helping with that. Kate, tag Kate first, and then I'll help if you need it.
Yeah, no, I think I have direction, and I know I can get this together. I think it's just, yeah, it was 2 days to get this.
It's a lot of work
together.
for
Yeah.
everyone. I will acknowledge that. It's a lot of work. And thank you.
Okay,
I have a couple more slides. So let me keep rolling with that. So tonight, we will be looking at 4 of the elements of the comprehensive plan: transportation, capital facilities, utilities, and the parks and open space element. The transportation element, the bulk of the changes there were an update to the level of service analysis for our different transportation infrastructure, to make sure that it can keep pace with our projected growth. And then also some amendments to align with the multi-county planning policies and the county-wide planning policies. So there were updates to the goals and policies there. Similar in the capital facilities element, again, we updated the level of service analysis in there, to make sure that our facilities keep pace with our growth. And then also amended the policies to square with the multi-county planning policies and the CPPs. The utilities elements got some minor updates to align with those regional planning policies. And then the parks and open space element is a new element of the comprehensive plan. It primarily functions to adopt the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan by reference, and then also to direct the creation of 2 new zones. The first of which is the open space zone that the Planning Commission took a look at earlier this month. And then it also directs the creation of a park zone following the comp plan update. So it won't be happening this year. It would be happening after the comp plan update is adopted. So those are the 4 elements that we're looking at. I see Deb has her hand up.
Adam, I just noticed that the slide that you have up is it looks like we're looking at the backdrop on your computer screen instead of the full slide. So I don't know if you're presenter mode.
Oh, you just see a big mountain? Is that?
I see a beautiful mountain.
Yeah, that's Mont Blanc. Yeah. Sorry, let me.
That's okay. I just want to make sure that anybody watching this later.
Yeah, good catch. Thanks. Let's see. Okay. And so those were the 4 elements that we'll be taking a look at. So there were 3 staff recommended motions that were included with Planning Commission Bill 2413. We provided these as kind of the roadmap to get from A to B to get to your recommendation over the course of these meetings. The first recommended motion was made last week. It took care of those the policy gaps and the internal consistency topics, as we talked about earlier. I can change motion 2 to a check mark, as clarified today, that was more or less resolved at the end of last meeting. And that's just relating to those findings. Again, we can continue to change or update the findings as we go. And then finally, once we've gone through tonight and the review of the other elements next Wednesday, we can the third recommended motion will make the overall recommendation to the City Council for the total comp plan update. So that's kind of how we get from here to our recommendation. As a reminder, we're targeting the conclusion of the deliberations for next Wednesday, the 12th. If we find that we need more time, we have kind of an emergency meeting we can have on the 28th. The 19th is the Juneteenth holiday. So the city is closed that Wednesday. So that's looking ahead at the next couple of meetings. So that concludes my presentation. And so if you have, I can entertain those now, and we can get started on the discussion.
Thanks, Adam. So we do have some suggested proposed amendments from Commissioner Rageb and former Commissioner Gills, and so we could deal with those that address the transportation element primarily. I don't know if we can adopt any of the elements at this point without having finalized review of the public comments and addressed any of the proposed amendments that are gleaned from those comments. So I think anything that we do tonight would be provisional and subject to change based on that. So with that, I would suggest that we perhaps start with the amendments that Commissioner Rageb provided to us, and deal with the transportation elements of those. Unless there is objection. Okay, Adam, do you want to speak to your proposed amendments, or let's
Sure.
take them one at a time, I guess.
Yeah, Adam, Zach, would it be possible to please put that list of 8 up for everyone to read?
Yes.
And, in the absence of a mediator, in the absence of provided definitions, I tried to avoid third rails. And as I said, in line with what Chair Batazzo said, I agree with her. Like, let's give any policy changes to council. So that's why number 1, motion 1, 2, and 5 are phrased as add to our findings. The others are just simple text corrections that no, actually 4 is not. Anyway, let me talk one at a time. So I'll make the first motion. I move that we add to our findings. Transportation element policy goal 4.9 received 2 strong public comments. One comment mentioned the word socioeconomic as a possible alternative. During a brief discussion, it was brought up that key definitions related to this goal are not currently contained within the comprehensive plan document. And to tie it to that matrix, that addresses comments that came out of PUBs number 2 and 3. I guess I would look for a second on this.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? Commissioner Hughes.
Yeah, I just have a consistency question for staff, and that's kind of why I was hoping to.
I'm going to interrupt for just a moment. I'm sorry. Somebody has a second speaker on, so we're getting feedback. Could be a phone.
I think Adam just handled it with a mute.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. So for something like this, I think because it is fraught, I think our best reference is the MPPs, or are they CPPs and MPPs? The recommendations from those and the recommended language from those. My opinion is that should rule the day. And so I wanted to ask staff if that proposed language was consistent with MPPs and CPPs that we've already reviewed, or is it inconsistent with it? In my review, I found it to be inconsistent with the language provided to us by the agencies. So I would like staff opinion on whether or not changing and removing those words and changing to the word socioeconomic is consistent or inconsistent with the documents provided to us.
So that specific policy in the transportation element is nearly verbatim what the multi-county planning policies. The language about Black, Indigenous, people of color is taken specifically from those documents.
So if we were to change that and remove that language, then when we be departing from the documentation we were provided.
Correct. Yeah, it would
Thank
be
you.
it would be a larger, a more significant departure from that language.
Thank you. That's all.
Adam,
I just want to, in response to that question, I just want to be clear. I'm not proposing a change to goals. I'm just proposing that we kind of boil down public comment. And I believe this is a statement of fact from reviewing public comment. And yeah, it's not proposing changes to any goals. It's just saying, hey, city council, this is one of many public comments.
Chair Patazo.
I do actually appreciate the amount of work that Commissioner Regeb put into trying to make motions and adding to findings. I'm not inclined to recommend all these findings one by one because I think I want to discuss them, or excuse me, all at once. I think I'd rather just discuss and make some modifications. But I'm happy to be able to move findings forward as we modify and address them, but I'm appreciative of the consolidation.
Commissioner Hughes.
Yeah, my concern is that when we put something down as findings, like the other findings that I'm reading those as recommendations for what to do next. And restating a public comment is not a recommendation. So maybe we could get some clarification because the public comment is available to council. And as we develop this matrix that shows that public comment and groups it by theme, I think that summarizes the public comment. My understanding is the findings are what public comments we are recommending that the council consider to take action on. And again, agree with Commissioner Regeb and Chair Battazo that we are not making those policy decisions, but we are making recommendations. So to me, something that is inconsistent with the MPP and CPP language is not something that I feel comfortable with putting in Planning Commission findings. I think it belongs in a summarized document of public comment, and we say what we did with the comment, which in this case to me would be, we found it's inconsistent. But it's still presented to the council so that they can see it.
Chair Patazo.
Sorry, old hand.
Okay. Commissioner Regeb.
And this is the last I'll comment on it. I don't want to waste everyone's time, but the way I saw this also is like, if we look at from staff recommended findings, table 2, F2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 are essentially based on direct public comment. So it's from the survey. So that's where I was coming from. I'll be quiet now on this one.
As I already have done, is commended Adam for taking the time to go through these things. And I agree that there were strong public comments on that. But what concerned me is the notion of including the change to socioeconomic as a possible alternative. Whether I agree or disagree that would be appropriate, it's clear that it is inconsistent with CPP T8, the county planning policy, T8, which uses the very language that the staff used. And so for my part, I'm uncomfortable presenting as even a possible alternative something that is contrary to the documents that we are supposed to be complying with. And frankly, to me, I think it sends a troublesome message and could potentially put us and council and the city in a bit of a bad light. by avoiding the language that is mandated, frankly, by the multi-county and the county planning policies. Adam, is that a new hand or old hand?
I know I said it'd be quiet. I'm happy to accept a friendly amendment to remove that second sentence. I think it is very important to have those key definitions that were referred to. I think it was Commissioner Ashish asked about those definitions, and then I think Webster's and Commerce were thrown out as sources. I think it's very important to get those definitions in the comp plan document so that it's very clear. So someone wants to put forth a friendly amendment to remove that second troublesome sentence, as I hear from commission. I'm happy to do that. And now I'll be quiet on this one.
Kate,
I think I might be a little bit confused about what's happening at this point. I guess the one comment I wanted to make is that I believe we are going to put some comment forward in our findings. And staff has interpreted ways to do that for some of these items. But they're ones that we agree with. And so there's a distinction there for me. But yeah, I'm happy to hear what the revision would be without that second sentence. Thank you for that offer.
so is there a second for including or retaining that finding without the second sentence?
I'll second.
Point of order, Chair, or excuse me, Vice Chair. I didn't hear a motion to amend the first motion. Was there someone, I know that Commissioner Riga offered to accept a friendly amendment to change it, but I didn't hear a motion from somebody doing that.
Yeah, you're correct on that. So the question is whether Adam wants to revise his proposal to take out the second sentence.
Be to move that, or I thought someone else had to friendlyly amend it, but I'm happy to repropose it minus the sentence beginning with one and ending with alternative. If the seconder of my motion is also amenable to that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Deb.
Yes, so
how's this handled? I'm the second on this.
okay, so if the two of you agree to withdraw your motion, your second, you can restate it. Otherwise, we need a motion to amend this. The city tries to steer clear of friendly amendments. I know it's a term that a lot of us have used, but we really try to steer clear of friendly amendments. It's not good Robert's rules. So
Well, we actually, Adam, you actually proposed to move 3 items forward, and you're amending one of them. Just one, but wasn't it 1, 2, and 5? You proposed to
No,
add 1, 2, and 5 to findings. Wasn't that?
I
the
was
motion?
no, the motion was purely on number 1.
Okay.
That was it.
I just want to make
Yeah,
sure
but
I'm clear
I'm
about
happy
what is
to
the motion on.
I'm happy to withdraw the original motion and remove minus the second sentence if that's the cleanest and most Robert's rules way to do it.
Deb, what do you need me to do?
I just need you to agree to that, at least to.
Okay.
So so that's been stricken from the record. If you'll restate what you would like your motion to state.
Can I make a request? I've had my hand up for a while here. Can we please put the language up? I love looking at your faces, but it would be really helpful to be able to consider the language as opposed to looking at your lovely faces. Thank you.
That's actually
Just
a
to make
really
sure
good
we're
idea.
all talking about the same thing.
So do I read it or what happens now, Deb?
I can read it if you'd like, as long as you agree with Adam, what Adam has done.
Okay, yeah, I agree with what Adam has done and take it away.
Okay. So Commissioner Reagan has made a motion that to add to Planning Commission findings, Transportation Element Policy Goal 4.9 received 2 strong public comments. During a brief discussion, it was brought up that key definitions related to this goal are not currently contained within the comprehensive plan document. Is there a second?
Second.
Kate,
Are definitions for those terms provided in the CPPs and MPPs? And if they are, I won't be able to support this. Because my thought is that we would be able to just, that will show up. The MPP, CPP definitions will show up in the table as we didn't respond to this because here are those definitions.
Chair Batazza.
Sorry, that was a question for staff. Are those definitions in the MPPs and CPPs?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Unfortunately, I don't recall off the top of my head if those definitions are in there. I know that the terms are used throughout, but I don't know if there's a definition.
I think I would just like to point out that we're adding to our findings a statement, but we're not making a request. So there is no request to add it. There's no request to do anything different. There's just a statement. It was brought up that key definitions are not currently contained within the comprehensive plan document. Are we making a recommendation to do anything about it, or are we just pointing to something? I just want to be clear about what that is.
Adam,
The intent is, yeah, not recommend doing anything, just a, hey, heads up, when we talked about it. Yeah, it's just a little pointer, I guess. Yeah, I'm not 1, 2, and 4, or sorry, 1, 2, and 5 are not. I'm happy to remove number 5, but 1 and 2 are not recommending action. It's just essentially a summary of public comment and, in this case, our discussion about it last week.
any further, or Kate?
Just a processing here. Again, this is a question for staff. Are our findings supposed to be recommending things? Again, my understanding is that it's staff job to summarize public comment. My concern is that if we cherry pick 1 or 2 public comments and put them up to point to the council, we're treating public comment unevenly. I want each public comment and commenter to be treated with the same level of importance and respect. So 2 questions there. 1, are we supposed to be putting things in findings if they aren't recommendations? And 2, I guess this is more of a discussion topic. Do any other commissioners see it as potentially problematic to highlight 1 or 2 comments, but not other public comment? I find it problematic personally. I wouldn't be able to support this even as amended or revised.
So I'll answer the first question. Or I can't answer the first question. So the findings are your statement to go along with your recommendation on the draft. They don't necessarily have to be making requests or like proposing direction. They can provide additional context. So it's appropriate to have them summarize discussion if the commission wants to memorialize that and forward that on to the council.
Chair Patazzo.
I think just in response to Commissioner Accuse's concerns, I think the way I'm treating this is that we have a very in-process system going on, including we have a lot of public comments. We have a matrix with no commentary in it. And that there's only one commissioner currently who's taken a crack at adding things in. And so I was considering this particular first run as the first of several, with an expectation that we were going to address everybody's in some form or another, except for those comments that say, what were you thinking? I don't plan to address those in this round of work. But the ones that are substantive, pointing to goals and the comprehensive review, between this meeting and next, I was addressing Commissioner Regeb's work because it's come up and we're trying to work through it, and considering that as we consider things moving forward. In case that helps for context, I don't believe we're just singling out certain people. I think we're just addressing some of these comments, and I'll consider that as we consider the rest of them, what we haven't addressed yet. Does that make sense? Am I making any sense?
That makes sense to me. I'm not prepared to deal with this particular one out of the context of other public comments and out of the context of the MPPs and CPPs. The other ones that Commissioner Reb suggested, I'm assuming we can come to consensus on most of those pretty darn quickly. So we started with a challenging one, and my preference is to table that until we have the full table of public comment, and so that we can decide as a group which comments do we want to elevate in a summary to council and not.
Is that a motion to table number 1?
That's a motion to table number 1.
Second. Any further discussion? And from my perspective, we're tabling it to be considered with the others. Yeah.
Yes, that's the idea, to be considered with the revised table that has all of the public comment, because I want to know that we are fairly treating all the public comment and elevating all of the comment that we think merits elevation.
Okay, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion about tabling number 1? Seeing none, Deb, would you like to call the roll?
Point of order. We have another motion, right? Is this a friendly amend or a nested motion? I know I'm being annoying. I think all the others are going to move quickly, but we had a motion that was presented and seconded, right?
I believe a motion to table can be done at
Okay.
any time unless
Okay.
I'm incorrect about that.
I'm not knowledgeable.
I believe you're correct. I'm about 90% certain that you're correct, Vice Chair Murphy. But I would need to check if you want me to. But I believe once a motion has been made to table it, that kind of puts a stopgap.
I'm amenable to that. No worries.
Okay. All right. So we do need to address. I have the motion recorded as a motion was made by Commissioner Hughes, seconded by Vice Chair Murphy, to table the motion to be considered with the revised table that includes all of the public comments. All right. And with that, Chair Batazzo.
Aye.
Commissioner Regum.
Hey.
Commissioner Rashis.
Name.
I'm sorry, nay.
Name.
Vice Chair Murphy.
Aye.
And Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Okay.
3 ayes, the motion is approved.
Okay. Let's move on to number 2, Adam.
All right, Adam, Zach, could we put that one up? And in light of the revised matrix that was shown, I would like to correct 3 to now 6. For reference, so the motion is, I move that we add to our findings, transportation element policy goal 4.10 received 6 public comments asking that we note that off-street parking is important to families and those who are handicapped. That comes from pub 2, 3, 8, 11, 12, and 14 from my reading.
Second. Any discussion? Okay. Deb, you want to call the roll?
Just one moment. I want to catch up with all of the. Okay. Chair Batazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Vice Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashid,
Aye.
and Commissioner Reagan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Number
Okay, Adam,
three.
number 3.
Okay, I'll move quickly. I know we all want to go
We're on a
home.
roll now.
Yeah, now we're moving. Number 3, this is in response to comment from Pub 1, I believe. Let me just double check. I want to be sure. Yes, Pub 1. And this is just correcting the terminology referring to the Regional Mountains to Sound Trail. It was called the Regional Mountains -2 Sound Trail. And I went to the website because our commenter said, hey, this is wrong or something. And I just said, let's match the website. The verbiage I saw on the website was the Regional Mountains to Sound Greenway Trail. So I move that we correct the phrase on page 2, third paragraph, per the text presented by
Second.
Adam Zach.
I'd second that.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Commissioner Rashid,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Chair Batazzo,
Fine, aye, but I hate editorial crap.
Commissioner Reagan,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Murphy.
Aye.
Thank you.
I move that we amend transportation element policy 3.3 on page. Now, I guess before I even make the motion, I mean, this is a little policy change. Could we do a consensus if we even want to talk policy here about adding and retain trees? If not, I don't want to waste time going through the formalities.
I don't think it's a major policy issue.
Okay, then I move that we amend transportation element policy 3.3 on page 4 to add and retain trees per public comment, pub 1. It currently reads construct transportation. Well, the text is correct. Do I need to read everything? Deb?
No, I'm fine. I
Okay,
have
okay.
the same text that you all
All
have.
right. All right.
Do we have a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Okay,
I have two concerns about this one. One is that we have a pending capital project action that this would impact pretty severely, and it is connecting the missing link in the middle of the island. I don't know whether this comment was made to specifically prevent tree removal from happening there. It's a very, very controversial capital project. There's a variety of very strong public opinion on it. I think this is potentially, intentionally or not, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I think this might merit more discussion. The other comment I had, and I'm not saying what I would put one way or the other, I just think I think it merits some review of our existing CIP program and how this would impact that. The other, I think we need some staff analysis of that is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And then the other comment I would have is what do we mean by unused portions of public rights of way? Because I think if this, that's kind of unclear. Maybe there's a definition for that staff can offer.
Adam, any thoughts on that? Adam, Zach? No, Adam, Zach.
Yeah, I'm just taking a quick look to see if we have a definition. I can, if there's discussion, I can chime in a minute here.
Okay, sounds good. Chair Patazzo.
In the interest of transparency. I will tell you that if I were a practitioner responsible for implementing this goal, I would consider the words encourage and sensitivity to strongly encourage me to retain as much as possible, but I can still cut a tree down if I need to do my job. And so, I'm sensitive to making sure that if we need to remove trees to maintain infrastructure that seems to be failing us in some places. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but we have some problems on the island that need fixing. That might need some trees cut down, among other things. I want to make sure we're prioritizing maintaining what we need to prioritize. And we keep trees where we can because it makes things cooler and it's getting hot outside. And I don't see, this is one of those places where I'm like, we're adding edits to something that doesn't make it stronger. And if I were on the opposite side of the table, that edit doesn't make it stronger for me to retain trees. But it also doesn't make it weaker for me to cut it down. So I'm just saying the thing out loud. It's also the world according to AGB. End comment.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Let's call the roll and deal with number 4.
Vice Chair Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Rashid,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Nay.
Commissioner Reagan,
Aye.
and Chair Batazzo.
Aye.
Motion
Okay.
approved 4-1.
Number 5. Adam?
I will pass on 5 because I think reading it does kind of go in terms of a suggestion as opposed to a report out. So I won't even move 5. I'm happy to just suggest moving 6, 7, and 8 all as one. In response to Chair Batazzo's concern about editorials, I think this is not wordsmithing, but this is correcting incorrect information presented. I know as a commission, we looked at this a year and a half ago, and we said, yeah, let's go with these forward-looking comments. But you know, it still isn't running through. For number 7, I mean, the document used to say data from 2017 said the parking lot ride is full. Well, now we have a public commenter who states they live, across the street, and they've given us 2 sets of photos showing that has changed. I mean, I tried to anchor how far back is 2017. Gas was under $3 a gallon, and median housing price in King County was 67% lower. So I'm just saying for 7, I want to reinstitute the source of those data, and then also articulate the public comment as proven with the photographs that things have changed in 7 years. And then once again, 8 is also just correcting incorrect information. it's not, or sorry, an assumption in an analysis was removed. And I think it's very important as someone who has, done a lot of science, when you make an analysis, it's very important to document your assumptions. And this is an assumption that now we can look back on that, and it was an incorrect assumption. So I understand the concern with wordsmithing, but I think these comments raised by one member of the public, PUB1, I think these are very important ones to get factually correct for the public to read for the next 8 years. So I guess I'll just move 6, 7, and 8 all together as presented on the screen.
So Adam, I have a question. Adam Zach, I have a question for you. And I don't recall if it was discussed previously, but why was the reference to the 2017 data removed from the section?
I don't recall. This was one of the elements that we had consultants work on, and I don't remember their exact reasoning for that edit.
And do we have actual more current data that we could be looking at instead of anecdotal photographs from a neighbor?
I'm sure that there's a data set that probably exists. It's not incorporated into this draft, but
I think the parking study may have looked at this, and I'm not sure. That's something we could check on.
Yeah. I would like a little more information before we start carving this one up. Kate,
Yeah, I was gonna, I don't know if there needs to be a point of order because there is a motion on the table and it hasn't been seconded and we're discussing.
you're right.
But I
Correct.
do have a comment as well.
Okay. Do we have a second for the motion to consider 6, 7, and 8?
Second.
Okay. Back to you, Kate, for comment.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the anecdotalness of this information, and I believe the parking study does address some of this topic. So rather than deliberating and voting on it now, I would ask that staff look at these 3 and do a quick analysis of whether or not they're covered by a formal study. I think they're interesting comments, and the other thing I'm concerned about is things are also changing and very rapidly, because the parking lot emptied during the pandemic, but businesses are starting to move into some offices again. But what's going to, how's that going to work out? How is changes in interest? I think this is a moving target. So I think it'd be very difficult to pinpoint what exactly is happening right now, because I feel like this particular issue is in flux. So I guess my ask is that I don't want to table another thing. I don't want to be that guy. So I'll just express my concern. I think staff should analyze this.
Chair Batassa.
I appreciate the sentiment of accuracy, which is what I think of many of these elements are proposed under. And I would also note that these existed to some degree, similar language during the construction of these pieces. I'm just not inclined to vote for them. I do think because we are still recovering from the pandemic and we're seeing trends changing in parking lots. And I will tell you guys that because I'm still a regular transit user and I use it often, and sometimes I drive down there and sometimes I don't, it's very hit or miss. It used to be very predictable about if you weren't in the parking lot by 7 a.m., you weren't getting a spot. And now it's unpredictable because I don't know whose offices are requiring who to be back in the office by what day. And so it's hit or miss, and hashtag Mariners, stuff at Lumen. People do use that park and ride because they can. So I'm just disinclined to change things right now. I don't think it adds any more strength to people's arguments for or against things. And all of these statements, as originally written, are mostly true in terms of what that link will eventually provide when Sound Transit gets it open after not building it right the first time. So I'm just letting you know I'm disinclined to approve them in any capacity, whether we table them or not.
Commissioner Reagan.
I'm happy to pull 7. I think the point about if we have better data than the anecdotal public testimony, I think that's fine. I think 8, I mean, the 6 and 8, I see no reason for the city to analyze them. I mean, these are facts, right? This is articulating an assumption made in 8, and 6 is just saying, hey, this is what it's planned to do instead of this is what it is doing. So I'll stand fast on 6 and 8. If the seconder of the motion is happy to remove 7, I'm happy to withdraw the motion and remake it for 6 and 8.
Fine with me.
Okay, any further discussion on 6 and 8? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Accuse,
Nay.
Vice Chair Murphy,
Nay.
Commissioner Reagan.
Aye.
I'm sorry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rishis
Aye.
and Chair Batazzo.
Nay.
Okay, motion fails 3-2.
Okay. So we have an email which Chair Batazzo probably hasn't seen from former Commissioner Gels that had a few other proposed changes, some of which are relevant to this discussion tonight, transportation and economic development. I suggest that we move to those since those are relatively concrete. Adam, Zach, can you put that up? Victor?
Just a question. We have other emails, and this is a little bit along the lines of Kate's or Commissioner Accuse's earlier comments. We had other emails that were actually also equally specific. And I'm thinking of the one that I highlighted last week from, hang on for a sec. Also, and apologies for the mispronunciation, Alsu Spencer Perez Jr. Are we going to treat that one in the same way?
Well, that one is very similar to the Jeffrey Weissman email, almost identical. And what I understood is that we were going to try to deal with those in the matrix, but we can put these others in the matrix if that's the preferred approach.
I guess certainly Mr. Gels is a former commissioner. I just want to make sure that we're not providing the appearance of preferential treatment because of his service here on the commission, and that we're treating these proposals that are coming in from the public equally if they're specific and they're requesting specific changes.
I don't have a problem either way. I was treating Commissioner Gells's input pretty much the same as Commissioner Regeb's, but if you think, or if the sense of the commission is to put this in the matrix, then I'm happy with that.
Well, the difference is we have Commissioner Rageb and we have former Commissioner Gels.
Yeah, I think his submission was before his term ended, was the concept. But I agree with you that it does suggest that he's given preferential treatment, which is certainly not the point.
I don't want to belabor it, but I only got the email this weekend. And so I think if I'm correct, I think his term ended last Wednesday.
I assumed it ended with this meeting, but
Okay. I don't know.
I could very, very well be wrong.
I just went off of our goodbyes.
Yeah.
My understanding is
Commissioner Reagan.
his term expired on May 31st.
Oh, okay, then we should treat him the same as the rest.
Correct.
Okay, so let's put him in the matrix, as it were. Adam.
Yeah, I think so. I saw his longer email, and yes, I would agree with, seems like everyone else, that was ought to be treated equally with all our other public comments. But on table 1 of our document for today, I'm looking through the email, and he did propose PC4 and PC5 while still a commissioner. So I figure we ought to give him that. That being said, I think PC5, if I recall correctly, was brought up immediately prior to Commissioner Boatsman's motions, and he just mentioned it and then kind of waved it off. We never even breached the topic of PC4, and I will support PC4, but I thought PC5 was waved off. You know, I saw it reappear in the public comment one, but I think as a commissioner, my interpretation is it was just waved off.
Yeah, I was not looking at PC 4 and 5. I was looking at his longer email with the proposal. So to Chair Batazzo's point, PC 4 is really corrections, which I think that staff can incorporate. If PC 5 is waved off, then it's moot, and then we put the rest of his comments, his email comments, into the matrix. Okay. Any other proposed amendment or Chair Batazzo?
Well, I just have a question along the lines of my constant mewling. Adam, Zach, are you guys gonna do a copy edit on the stuff before you refer it? No offense, I need a copy edit on my stuff. Everyone needs a copy edit, you know, one that fixes words and punctuation or whatever else, so that Adam doesn't have to keep doing it for you. And we have to vote on motions to add a period. Not that we
Right,
do that very often.
and as we go through the process to, you know, things that are just minor grammatical errors or punctuation, those are things that we can fix as scrivener's errors and don't require action from the planning commission. So as we go through, I mean, obviously, if you find a missing semicolon or something, let me know, but we can correct those without an action from the planning commission.
Well, yeah, except for, so there have been times where, like, for example, someone pointed out commutes should change to commuters, which I think is accurate. It's a scrivener's error. That's not something we should vote on as a motion.
Yeah.
And yet it lands in the matrix as something that needs to be addressed. And I'm like, we should not have to address that, nor should we forward that to a matrix for discussion. So it is why I'm asking the question, because it's actually
Sure.
not clear to me how this gets addressed. So I want to just kind of press on that a little bit, like,
Mhm.
hey, that Scrivener stuff. I don't want to vote on it as a motion. I don't think it's a good use of our time or yours. And I want to make sure I know, hey, are you guys doing the copy edit or do you need us to do that too?
We
Yeah,
will be having a consultant, an editor, do a copy edit before the final version goes to city council.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Thank you. And then if I see it go to city council, I'm gonna tell you.
Okay, Adam, so there being no other amendments to consider at this point, it seems like we could turn to the actual documents, elements, to see if we want to, we have any further discussion of those at this point, subject to the future amendments based on the matrix. Is that a wise use of time or not?
that is where we were planning on this going. So if there's other amendments to those four elements, now would be the time to bring them up. But obviously that's pending the updated comment matrix next time.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the commission? Does anybody have any thoughts on whether any of the elements that are teed up for tonight need further discussion in the absence of amendments? Kate?
My thinking is that we have already discussed them extensively and that our job in making revisions is to do it in the context of public survey and public comment, which I don't think we're prepared to do this evening.
Okay, Adam?
Kate took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay. Well, I tend to agree with that too. Does anyone have any contrary views? Okay. So there's no reason to have a further motion on any of the, Chair Batazzo.
No, I think I was just going to say, to that extent, it is the expectation that at our next meeting, we're supposed to make any other additional changes and then refer something to council, which Adam, Zach, means you guys have a lot of matrix making between now and Friday. I'm just acknowledging that because I recognize that now what we're asking you to do is make a lot of recommendations and things. To the extent that you can use us, and I will just say, feel free to reach out to me too if you need some support, because I want to play team as opposed to play chase the rocks. But I think just in the effort of trying to get everything done by next week, like we were planning, it does mean this commission needs to be responding to a completed matrix and set of recommendations and approximate analysis for some of those questions. In order for us to be able to do that.
Okay, does staff have any further comments at this point?
No, I think I've got got my marching orders for the next couple of days, and I would ask or just reiterate, if you do have or if you do have proposed amendments ahead of next meeting, try to get those in as early as possible so I can distribute those to the rest of the commission. I think Commissioner Raghab's example of this meeting was really helpful. We efficiently got through a lot of material. So I think we can mirror that next week and keep on rolling. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because, in the absence of amendments based on public input, I don't see us spending hours of time discussing the elements that we've gone over many times before and approved.
Mm-hmm. That's the plan. Yeah.
Okay. So we're all clear. Okay.
Mhm.
Now we move on to other business. Is there, Allison, the Deputy Director report tonight?
I don't have anything new to report at this time.
Okay. If there's any planned absences, please convey those to chair and to staff. The next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 12 at 6 p.m. There being no other business to come before the Planning Commission, the time is now 7:55 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. Please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the broadcast. Good evening and thank you all for joining us.